Hey guys, Dark Humility here. You can always catch me at twitch.tv/Dark Humility for 6 to 7 days a week of Diablo action. Today, we have a Shadow Summoner, or rather my personal take on a Shadow Summoner. There's a lot of different versions of how to incorporate minions into some kind of Shadow build, or incorporate Shadow damage into some kind of minion build. I'd like to say that this is definitely more of a minion Shadow build as opposed to a Shadow minion build. So minions are actually doing most of the work. However, we have here a lot of different awesome ways to make it powerful. I believe that this approach is particularly effective in Season 1 with the Sacrilegious Heart and auto-detonating corpses and auto-casting corpse skills in general, because it really makes use of pretty much all of the possible faculties you can on some kind of minion shadow build. Anyway, what we're going to do here is we're going to quickly go over the skills on this build, and then Paragon, and then the gear, and then we'll show him off in a tier 70-ish Nightmare dungeon. I actually plan on eventually doing it like near 100 as well, and I also plan on checking out 100% pure minions. So that's what we're gonna do. Alright, at any rate, here we go. You literally just take these for the sake of getting some points in this initial area so that we can eventually get down here. So that's it. These do nothing. Then we get max hewed flesh. You do want the corpses, yes, maximum corpses, so you're going to want to put all your points into this. This build does not use any core skills and does not use any essence whatsoever. So there is that. Of course, without the decrep part, you may actually have to use the skill Decrepify again, but you will not use any essence beyond that. Of course, we're going to want to get Ghastly Blood Mist for corpses. Oftentimes you might even want to initiate with Blood Mist just so you can get some corpses on the ground next to the monsters. You're going to want to max out Skeletal Warrior Mastery, and we max out Corpse Explosion and get Blighted Corpse Explosion. So this is a huge source of the shadow damage here, but a lot of it is automatically detonated by a Sacrilegious, so we don't even have to use it that often. We also have some Fueled by Death as well. You can definitely max it out. This is only like 3%. I kind of just threw some extra points here. As a matter of fact, it might actually be more useful to lower the cooldown on Blood Mist, so we might actually just throw those extra points there instead for the sake of this demo, because after all, this isn't actually doing too much in general. Since we get up close to the monsters for Hellbent Commander and just in general for being on the front lines with our minions, we're going to want to make sure we have Death's Embrace, which will allow us to do more damage and take less damage. We just get free DR. This is solid if you're going to be doing any kind of damage yourself, and the enemies are always cursed, which they are with Decrepify with the Decrepit Heart. So there you go. You're going to want to make sure we upgrade that Decrepify on the Decrepit Heart, though with Abhorrent Decrepify, which is going to massively lower our cooldowns just by being around enemies. This is really broken in Season 1, and one of probably the biggest reasons why the Necromancer is so strong, because it's benefiting from some pretty sick class-specific hearts, Decrepit and Sacrilegious, on top of the heart that like every other build is using, which is Barber. So there you have it. Pretty easy stuff there. And of course, max out Skeletal Mage Mastery to max out our mages as well. Life and damage, warriors, mages, and golems. Golem Mastery as well. Of course, we're also going to want to get Plagued Corpse Tendrils. That is going to be a major source of vulnerable. But we can also get vulnerable from the stun attack on the golem as well. Going to max out Necrotic Carapace. And then, of course, max out all of these summon passives, min-maxing them. Then we get Bone Storm. Bone Storm is just insane for survivability and damage increase. It's just absolutely nuts. It's hard to beat. especially if you're going to be on the front lines whatsoever. And then we get Shadowblight to boost our shadow damage on this build. Of course, we have shadow damage coming from an aspect empowering Bone Storm, and we have shadow damage from Corpse Explosion, and we just have a few different sources of shadow damage in general. So it's all good stuff. Very good stuff indeed. One thing to note, of course, is that we also get Reaper skeletons to get more corpses. We get Shadow skeletons, of course, to take advantage of Shadowblight and just to further stack shadow damage in that way. And then we also get the Iron Vulnerable for another source of Vulnerable. However, another solid option on this would be Blood that absorbs damage, especially if you want to be tankier. It's definitely what I would do in hardcore, and it's definitely probably what I'm going to be doing if I want to push a tier 100 dungeon. I'm going to go to Paragon, of course. So a shadow minion build in general has a lot of different options here. You can focus more on shadow damage in your Paragon boards, more on your minions, blah blah blah. But if you want your minions to be effective at all, you're going to at the very bare minimum do certain things. So Gravekeeper is pretty solid. It increases our survivability here with boosting our armor by a ton. Which is pretty nice. You're getting like 450 armor off that, which is pretty sick. And just boosting our damage being next to so many corpses and with so much corpse generation. We're also going to get tons of these rare nodes here. You could even get this rare node if you wanted more skeletal mage damage. Kind of out of the way though, so I didn't really bother with it. But you can get Cult Leader to power up all your minions, and this will make your minions just a lot tankier and do more damage in general. So you're going to want all that stuff. You're going to want to buff your minions, make sure they have pretty solid stats so they can survive. So the Cult Leader board, Dead Razor is pretty much a mandatory thing on pretty much most minion builds I can personally think of. You're going to want that somewhere. Of course, we then go into the Withered board on this just because it's really, really solid when it comes to just boosting your damage from Corpse Explosion and Shielding Storm. It's good stuff. And then, of course, you can also get all these cool stats that in general increase damage done to and decreases damage done from monsters that are affected by shadow damage, which in general is pretty key. Also boost your shadow damage a bit, because why not? You can get less nodes here though if you want to focus on more further on. It's not really mandatory. I do like the fact that we can amplify and just boost our minions damage just by having that perfect permanent decrepit heart over the monsters, so that's kind of neat. However, there's definitely plenty of other options here that you could use. You could even start empowering your minions with Warrior. You can even get the Darkness one out for more shadow damage. There's definitely a lot of things you can do there. And then, of course, Control, because we have like a billion forms of crowd control, so that's kind of mandatory. I think Control Glyph is just one of the strongest things, period, on almost every build. And, of course, you get some damage reduction by having nearby corpses. So what we're going to want to do, I think, is also go into a new board. And then we're going to use the Exploit Glyph because minions benefit fully from critical strike damage and vulnerable damage. There's a couple of different stats they benefit from fully, including anything that is their own damage and critical strike and vulnerable damage. So anything that says minions specifically in those two. And then they also benefit from 30% from everything else. So in general, that's kind of what we have going on here. Nothing too crazy. As you can see, we're level 90, so we don't really have too much more to do. We're just going to get that Exploit Glyph online. We're going to probably run with that. Of course, if you want to have more focus on minions, you can do the Mage, Warrior, and Golem Glyphs. And you can even go into the Hulking Monstrosity board for more Golem damage. Blah, 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 blah. I'm definitely planning on doing that when I test out full minions, though, so don't worry about that. Blah, 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 blah. Alright, so that's pretty much all we want there. So this is like pretty much a perfect helm. You're going to want life, cooldown reduction, total armor, and lucky hit chance while you have a barrier. Lucky hit chance is good throughout your whole build. You do want all 4 of these stats. Ideally, it's pretty hard to get something with all 4 of them, especially ones that roll high like this one, except for the lucky hit, which is fine. It's just bonus pretty much, and it's really hard to get with the other 3 stats, so I'll take it. And then, of course, max disobedience. Disobedience just gives you more armor for free pretty much, and it's really easy to stack up. This one's pretty solid, honestly. I mean, pretty much what you want is a bunch of damage reduction stats on top of maybe max of minion life, and that's pretty much what this does. You're going to want that on both the armor and the pants. Of course, since this build does use Corpse Explosion for additional damage, this has 4 ranks of Corpse Explosion and then a bunch of defensive stats. Want really high defensive stats, total armor, damage from close, kind of diversify those damage reductions, and you're good. We're going to want extra mages there. We're going to want extra skeleton warriors. We're going to want this shadow damage, ultimate shadow for Bone Storm, because it just stacks up Shadowblight and it's amazing. It's going to add to our damage further. And of course we also have this as well, which basically makes you invincible. Once you stack up enough barrier, it's really hard for you to die. You can die, of course, especially in really high tier dungeons, but it's pretty insane. Chilling Storm is definitely going to allow us to survive on the front lines no matter what with this high focus minion build. Of course, we also have 4 ranks of Corpse Tendrils, movement speed, damage reduction while injured. This is also pretty much perfect stats here. You can also get movement speed after killing an elite though, but really solid stats on a lot of this stuff. This is also pretty solid. Pretty much the only stats that are going to help you and your minions are going to be attack speed, critical strike chance, and lucky hit chance in this build. And then it's dealer's choice as to like maybe a lucky hit proc or all stats, something like that. It's usually pretty solid. Let's see. Weapon, we just want critical strike damage on vulnerable damage. We want the lucky hit chance from a wand. That's pretty much what we want. The other things will also help a little bit too for both us and our minions in terms of doing more damage. Since this build does use darkness damage, we do want the blighted aspect, and since we do crowd control more so than make enemies vulnerable, you can kind of do it either way, but you can have emeralds or sapphires here and it probably won't matter, honestly. You can have Osseous Gale, of course, here for increasing the duration of Bone Storm. So we basically have Bone Storm up almost all the time. That is kind of what you want there. Ideally, though, you'd have maybe lucky hit chance instead of intelligence here on the focus here. You can also use a shield for a more tanky approach, but yeah, it's pretty solid. This is the star of the show of any minion build, especially with Barber Heart and everything else on the scene. It's pretty nuts. Super big burst damage, AoE burst damage, and increasing that lucky hit chance is going to make that proc as often as possible. Going to want that Barber Heart as well. Definitely going to want that Ring of Mendel though, no matter what. Decrepit Heart, level 5's good stuff. Rasping Veins, increasing your critical strike chance, increasing your minions' critical strike chance and damage via that as well. So, solid stuff. Vulnerable damage, critical strike chance, all good stats. Critical strike damage would have been nice to have on this as well, maybe, but it's always nice to have more survivability. Hellbent Commander helps the minions. Corpse Skills helps our Corpse Explosion for the most part, and also helps things like Corpse Tendrils. Very good. Minion attack speed, making minion attack speed is very important for making them proc this more often as well, so that's very good. And then we have armor. That's nice for being tankier. I think movement speed would be really nice on this instead of armor, because we can just run faster and whatnot. But armor is also solid for pushing high-level nightmare dungeons. Decay is the other Shadowblight aspect. Solid stuff. And of course, at a small penalty, we can just... it casts damage for us everywhere, and Corpse Tendrils everywhere all the time, making enemies pretty much permanently vulnerable and permanently stunned. Very good stuff. So yeah, that's what we pretty much want and move for the most part. I think I pretty much went over everything that I could possibly go over on this build. Let's show it off. Let's see. Is this a good build? I think we can do this. I did say something more like tier 70, but 66 should kind of give you an idea here. Oh, oops. Nice. Come on now. Come on, get in there. Get in there. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, there's definitely other ways to make yourself tankier for sure. You can take additional armor nodes on the Paragon board. Use a blood golem as well. We'll see if we how well we get through this without dying though, with this particular approach. And I always recommend when you're running nightmare dungeons, it's so much easier and you can push a lot higher, especially for faster glyph leveling or even for some bonus experience with an armor potion. Now just remember, you never actually have to fight monsters much higher than you, but if you do, glyph leveling is higher. You do level a little bit faster as long as you can handle it as well. Bone Storm and Blood Mist into the monsters. And then GG. Make sure to empower the minions every once in a while. With Raised Skeleton. That just boosts their stats straight up, boosts their healing, boosts their damage. Good stuff. And you notice here that we can pretty much constantly have Bone Storm on. That's kind of the idea here. Okay. We have a pretty good amount of lucky hit chance. You could definitely have more on our gear. But I'm not too dissatisfied with it. I think it's fun. Make sure to have that. Look how fast Blood Mist comes back up. That's why I'm confident in using it offensively for the corpses. Kind of just alternate between Corpse Explosion, Raised Skeleton, and everything else once you have both of those up. Notice that we're mostly fortified as well with Necrotic Carapace giving us more DR. We could take advantage of the damage reduction while fortified stat here as well. Here or not. Anyway, pretty solid stuff. Honestly, the Necromancer, you really can't go wrong this season with the Necromancer. Cards are insane. You can do whatever build you want, and it's probably going to absolutely wreck. As you can see here, you know, with minions, it's pretty easy. All 120 monsters are no problem. Love to get a video up, maybe showing a tier 100 once you hit level 100. It'll be a bit easier though, so I'll wait to do that. Also, commanding your golem like this will allow him to stun in front as well, which is also a great way to initiate with minions here. Definitely a great way to initiate. Absolutely. Notice that I'm using it quite often to stun things around me that aren't getting pulled in by corpse tendrils, or just to keep things perma-stunned even after getting hit by corpse tendrils. Iron Chain's kind of nasty for the minions sometimes, but as you can see, it's not too bad. Gotta take advantage of that golem, man. Yeah, so it doesn't take long to get that Mendeln proc once you have a lot of lucky hit chance. I'd like it on my shield. I'd also like a ring that has a higher amount itself. Those would probably do the most for it. Obviously, you can get more even on the gloves and on the helm as well. My other ring could even have it as well. Really nice though for them to proc that Mendeln like as often as possible though. Don't get hit by the death explosions. Alright. So as you can see, it's pretty easy. Bone Storm's up almost all the time. Constantly shielding. Really smooth stuff. And all this extra damage from Corpse Explosion, I don't even have to cast it all the time. Just having this really strong Corpse Explosion This helps with extra damage dealing. Just initiate with that. There we go. There's definitely plenty of other versions of this build. I mean, you can definitely go like Reap or something instead of Corpse Explosion. I really like the extra damage it brings oftentimes though. Notice that we produce corpses like 50,000 different ways. That's what we want. Gotta get all those corpses for Bone Storm, Corpse Tendrils for Corpse Explosion. Very solid stuff here. Okay. Solid stuff.
I'm not ready yet.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff.
I'm not ready yet.
Alright, bosses get just absolutely destroyed. Notice that every once in a while here. Pretty much on auto kill here. Constantly getting crowd controlled as well. Sometimes they die even faster. Burst damage can be crazy. There you go. Definitely spamming some more Corpse Explosion could help with that, absolutely. Pretty easy, flawless, no struggle nightmare dungeon there. And GG stuff. Anyways, I will see you guys next time. Let me know what you guys think about this build in the comments below, and what you think about the Necromancer in general in Season 1. And of course, I'll also make sure to put, divvy up the sections here so you can check out various sections to see how to build this character. At any rate, Dark Humility over and out. See you guys next time.